Short story by Juan Esteban Carvajal. Where do I come from? Sometimes I feel where I belong is no longer where I come from. Since I was 4 years old, my mother has been a very busy woman who was constantly moving country to country due to her job. I was born in South America, Brazil. Today, I'm a 19 years old, and up to this point, I had never lived in a country for more than 2 years. I have always feel like the water that passes through a river and discharges in the ocean, but never will touch one point twice. My culture and idiosyncrasy are as the wind that flows on the beach. It barely passes once a year. Once, I lived in 4 countries and 6 cities, meeting a lot of cultures in a very short period of time. But you know what I remember the most on my vague memory of all those places? My mother shouting all the mornings, "Wake up, you must go to school. Find yourself with new people." For me, that was meaningless. But situations like this one were repeating all the time. And these were the type of things that made everything more difficult. I have met so many people, so many places, but I've never had the chance to meet culture as what it really is. To me, culture is transitory. Identity is an eraser. It starts with a very big object, but left almost nothing. This is what concerns me the most. I have spent the last months trying to understand who should I consider myself if I feel I belong to somewhere that has no physical entities. This was the short story by Juan Esteban Carvajal. Starting from the analyze, so we have the plot in the story. Me as a reader, I can identify that the plot in this story is shown by an exposition in the first lines. We can see how the character portrays how has been his life. So he says or she says that she is 19 years old, that she or he is from South America, and that her mother has been constantly traveling, and that's kind of the exposition in the first lines. We have a rising action when the character starts to talk about the lack of identity that he or she is feeling or experimenting up to this point of his life, and we lack in this part of the plot of a climax. In my personal opinion, we don't have a climax or some kind of situation that piques or gaps my attention to understand that is one big part of the short story that can be categorized as a climax. But then maybe in the lines identity is an eraser, or when he stops talking about culture, we have the denouement, because the story is concluded in with the phrase, I open quotes, "This is what concerns me the most. I have spent the last months trying to understand who should I consider myself if I feel I belong to somewhere that has no physical entities." So this phrase let us understand that the character is closing his idea, that the story is giving us a denouement, but it never shows, for example, a falling action or a climax in terms of plot. What does this try to what does the author intention here is with the lack of climax or falling action? To me, it's playing with the theme of the story, which is identity for me. So playing with the theme of the story, which is identity, by lacking a climax and by lacking the falling action, is like just placing the theme there, but never giving a really truly conflict or a very precise situation in which the author let the reader know that the character is facing a problem in a concrete situation, because the character talks about many problems, but never let us understand on, or personally to me, never let me shows how this kind of problems will represent a climax on the story. In the theme, well, I've already mentioned it. We have as a symbol the identity and the lack of this person belonging to somewhere physically, which take us to the analyze of the setting. The setting in this story is strongly related to the theme, due to the fact that the theme talks about the lack of identity of the character, and he places himself as someone who does not belong to somewhere with physical entities, as shown in the last phrase. So it let us know the author provides this piece to us by giving us a setting that is more psychological, a setting that has no physical things to touch or to look, but a setting that shows us different situations and the character moving in the situations, facing different kinds of problems in each situation, and letting us know that we also lack a concrete setting, a setting that the character can touches and can feel. This also the theme, the identity, the psychological setting is shown in lines where it says, once I lived in 4 countries and 6 cities. There he's saying that he lived in cities, which actually cities represent physical entities. But then he stands that in his vague memory of all those places, what he could remember the most was just a phrase of his mother, and that he lacks identity, and phrase and other phrases before. The character also also provide us phrases like this one: my culture and idiosyncrasy are as the wind that flows in the beach, which is also a metaphor that let us know as readers that the setting and the theme are completely psychological, related to a lack of identity. What does this makes in the reader? What does this has as an impact on the reader? It personally changed everything that the author tries to provide, because it clears up many things that we need to understand in the story. So basically is that the character faces a problem with his own determination and trying to find who he is and where does he belongs to, and that has nothing to do with a physical entity, that has nothing to do with a place in specific, or with a country in specific, or with a city in specific. This is what the author tried to give the reader as a tool to understand that the theme and the part of the setting and part of the characterization is completely psychological and completely symbolic. In the speech, we have just one piece of direct speech was where it says, my mother shouting all the mornings, wake up, you must go to school, find yourself with new people. For me, that was meaningless. So we have this direct speech provided by the author in trying to help the reader understand that even though he lived in so many physical places, that he met so many people, that he met so many different cultures, he hasn't find where does he belongs, or even a link with one of those thousands of cultures. This direct speech also helps the reader to understand the conflict of this story. That in the conflict of this story, we can find a conflict against situations and a conflict against himself. Conflict against situation, we can see it in the first two lines where it says, since I was 4 years old, my mother has been a very busy woman who was constantly moving country to country due to her job. So it's something that he cannot manage. It's because of her mother's job that he's constantly moving country to country. And well, due to this, he's presenting the other conflict, which passes to be a conflict versus himself. Why? Because he is trying to find his identity. Where is this in the story? We can clearly see it in the last three lines where it says, I have spent the last months trying to understand who should I consider myself. So we know that the conflict isn't against her mother, that the conflict isn't against all the places that he has been, but that he have the problem that he cannot find an identity or an idiosyncrasy all around the places that he has been. This story, from the point of view, is written in first person. This is shown in the first line where it says, sometimes I feel where the pronoun I let us understand that the story is written in first person, and that the tense is mostly presented all in the short story in the past. For example, where it says, I was born in South America, or where it says, my mother shouting all the mornings, which is a recap or a flashback to something that has been happened in previous events or in previous situations. And these two things, that the point of view is in first person and that is in past, let the reader understand that even though the character has all the management of what he's telling, he lacks of some sort of things that could solve his problem. So this limitates what he can do, and this let us understand that everything that he's doing has already occurred, and that he is limited by these actions.